Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started in a minute or two. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Phase 1 Winners Showcase for ONC's EHIgnite Challenge. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on ONC channels and the challenge website at ehignitechallenge.org. Next slide, please. My name is Adam Wong. I'm the project manager on ONC's side for this challenge. You can see that we have a simple agenda today. I'll be taking us through the first couple elements here, but the majority will be dedicated to the Phase 1 Winners Showcase. Next slide, please. So, a quick shout out to my fellow challenge team members, my ONC colleague, Priscilla Owusu-Mensah, and then from Ensemble Consultancy, Oliver Gerland and Amanda Buchanan. Next slide, please. A quick refresher on this challenge. So since the end of 2023, ONC certification has required health IT developers to provide EHI export functionality, EHI or electronic health information, primarily consisting of individually identifiable data within medical or billing records. And exports must be in an electronic and computable format, but without any particular data standard or transport method specified. So the problem here is that EHI exports have not seen the uptake and advancement anticipated, representing untapped potential to help patients. However, these exports can overwhelm with hundreds of pages of information without providing useful context or support. And this lack of usability has led to a lack of adoption. So this represents a clear opportunity for action. So our prompt to the innovation community was to transform single patient EHI exports into usable, readable, and actionable information that supports patient engagement, clinical care, and informed decision making. Also, we want them to use standards adopted in ONC's certification program, including FHIR R4, US Core IG, and the Smart App Launch Framework. Next slide, please. So um, we put out this challenge and the community really responded. We received 98 entries overall. This is the most that ONC has received in any challenge so far. And it was about 2 times over our initial expectation based on our own internal metrics. So, shout out to the community. Folks really responded, and we couldn't have been happier to see that. The challenge attracted a diverse pool of experienced teams and individuals, startups, and digital health organizations. We saw a very high quality response to the most basic task of addressing patient data summarization. And the best responses clearly described their visions of summarization and/or presented clean, user-friendly wireframes that demonstrated the visual aesthetic and organization of information. The top submitters really provided actionable elements that help users take the next step. And obviously, that helps all the users really know what to do next, and how they should go about it. We saw a very wide range of proposed AI functions. Particularly popular was NLP and chat functionality. And we also saw a variety of proposed uses of agentic AI. We saw also a wide variety of different approaches to user controls for data sharing. We were very pleased to see not just the use of ONC standards, but of extensions and further dives into other FHIR IGs and data sources. Lastly, interoperability was a strong suit throughout, as were commitments to HIPAA and privacy and security measures and regulations. The 9 phase 1 winners have moved on to phase 2 now, in which they will develop their proposals into working prototypes. Next slide, please. So let's hear more from the winners. These presentations are ordered by company or team name, so no priority given to how scores were represented. And first up, we have Derek Plansky, the CEO of Apertura Health.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Derek Plansky, and I'd like to introduce you to Apertura Health. Please, next slide. So our solution is to focus on patient-controlled health records. And from our perspective, the problem is that the data is just too voluminous and fragmented and in many different formats today. And we're aiming to start with the EHI export, but go beyond that into working on other digital data, other paper data, basically harmonizing the entire patient's healthcare record so that that information is brought together. The key piece here, our impact will really be driven by the fact that once this data has been ingested and brought together, it will be consolidated and presented in a concise, usable form that will be interrogatable and accessible by the patient, and also put in a format that can be transformed and used in a way to easily share with whichever downstream provider the patient is interested in working with, whether it's your primary care provider, the emergency room, a school nurse, or whomever. The 3 key principles of our organization are myself, who come from the interoperability space, George Michelson, who brings a lot of, several decades of engineering expertise to the table, as well as health tech and IoT experience, and Vitaly Kuznetsov with an extensive track record of product experience. Our core competencies really then are on the technical, operational, and product side. So naturally, we need to bring in some clinical expertise, and we're tapping some outside advisors on that as well, including Yelena Kolozeva and Irene Dumanis. Next slide, please. Our key technical approach here is really to leverage what exists and innovate on what doesn't. So that means we're talking about leveraging identity matching frameworks, such as Clear and ID.me, so that we can identify the patient reliably. This is tied into some of the work that's going on with the CMS health tech ecosystem. We're leveraging ONC's TEFCA work and the certified EHR FHIR endpoints for this mission. The CMS Aligned Network in particular is doing a lot of great work in driving adoption and making it easier to get these EHI exports. And there's also a trust framework associated with the Karen Alliance in terms of trusting the patient data apps themselves. Those things exist, and we're definitely using those capabilities, sort of standing on the shoulders of people who've come before us. And we're leveraging tools to fill in the gaps and turn those capabilities into an overall solution. So we're using artificial intelligence, the back end, to help harmonize and summarize the medical records. We're focusing on some patient-facing AI to help the patient understand the patient record so that they can interrogate it and interact with it, ask questions. And then lastly, really focusing on workflow and design so that this is something that's as intuitive to use as just pulling out your phone. We have some wireframes here on the screen, but just to show you, we've come up with those. But can we go to the next slide, please? So overall, we were asked to comment on technical feasibility, interoperability, and the overall potential impact of our solution. From a technical feasibility perspective, we're focusing on a microservices architecture and focusing on something that's horizontally scalable so that it works as well for the first patient as it does for the 100th or a millionth. Our development roadmap is actually well underway. We've got 5 key milestones. We've accomplished 3 of them. We've got a preliminary design, some on-device processing, and a prototype already built. And we're working on getting that prototype into production later this fall, and then getting the full patient interface into production also towards the end of the fall. Interoperability, I mentioned some of the standards previously, but we're leveraging, IAL2 and AAL2 identity proofing through Clear and IDMe, naturally Fire R4 because that's the EHI extract. We're also leveraging what can be done with individual access from TEFCA, so that goes back to HL7v3 and XCPD and XCA. And we're also working on integrating the Blue Button CMS claims data access so that we can bring in payer data as well. We believe collectively that all of this information will have three primary impacts in the healthcare ecosystem. First of all, will be improved patient literacy because a patient will be able to interact with their entire medical record and have a more cohesive way of interacting with it. We also believe that there'll be impact in terms of risk reduction because the care coordination will enhance communication between providers and at those various handoffs from one provider to the next. And lastly, there's an overall efficiency here because the patients won't have to worry about, well, once they load their data into the solution, they won't have to have as much of a time burden in terms of managing all of this. So thank you very much for your interest, and we're looking forward to moving on to phase two.
Wonderful. Next up, we have Tony Ma, President of Benten Technologies, President and CEO. Tony, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Tony Ma, CEO of Benten Technologies, and this is Safe for Both, an AI-powered maternal health infrastructure platform. Every year, about 240,000 births are affected by prenatal substance use exposure. There are federal laws in place that require what's called a plan of safe care for these infants, but the information needed to complete this is scattered across behavioral health, OBGYN, and hospital EHR systems. So documentation stays siloed. Care teams work with incomplete data, while 60% of states that are required to create this still run on paper-based plans. Safe for Both is that infrastructure platform that fixes this. We ingest multiple source EHI exports, synthesize one source as including source-cited maternal infant records to deliver human-reviewed plain language summaries to the moms, her care team, and her case managers, including the ability to auto-populate her plans of safe care and various draft and iteration. In our Delaware pilot, we had high completion rates and usability, so we've already built uh, most of this platform. We've done this before as a team of infrastructure builder with experience at the commercial, state, and federal levels, including launching the national My Healthy Vet platform and building some of the components, including delegation of authority and the components that became the blueprint for the CMS Blue Button. Our team has been backed by 6.5 million in non-dilutive funding to kind of move this forward. So how does this work and what are we envisioning? There are three stages to this platform: the ability to ingest, AI-assisted synthesis, and human review. We accept single patient EHI exports and standards-based feeds such as Fire R4 and others listed there. The AI parses, deduplicates, and reconciles the source, reconstructs the maternal infant timeline as well as information. It also populates the information into these plans for review and surfaces risks so that care teams can identify and flag these risks as well as cite where the sources of this risk are identified. The critical part is a licensed clinician or case manager approves everything before it reaches the users. There's no autonomous clinical or legal decisions ever, so that's really key. The case manager dashboard shows the full multi-source timeline from various components. The plan of safe care is auto-populated and auto-updated with information that the mom agrees to share based on our experience around the My Healthy Vet. Fields are cited based on source records, elements, and data, and the mom-facing app provides her with plain language summary of her medications, appointments, and care plans. She sees her results first, and she also controls who she can share them with. We are the first multi-source EHI synthesizer built for the maternal population with a consent architecture aligned to CFAR. And this isn't really a concept for us. So is this feasible? Yes. We've already built the architecture that's standard-based and EHR agnostic. We're building it for export first ingestion from platforms such as Simple Practice, Athena, Epic, and Oracle Health with HIPAA grade security, encryption, and full audit logging throughout. And we want to bridge the clinical data into state welfare systems, which you've had experience, including SACWIS and CCWS, the last mile, no other tool covers. So phase one is tightly scoped. We've been working on this. And so for this phase two, we will be looking at the behavioral ingestion prototype, a mom-facing summary, and the auto population of these POSC components. With demos from moms, the consent process, and governance-ready package as part of the phase two de-risking. We believe this impact is very measurable with targets including 80% plus completion rates at participating hospitals and health systems that serve this population, lower documentation burden that we will measure, as well as Medicaid cost avoidance. We'll scale this through a B2G model. And so Safe for Both will make EHI export readable, usable, and actionable for the mom, baby, and her care team. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next, we have Zaman Shah, who is founder and CEO of CareLead. And just as a quick reminder, please inform our facilitator to go next slide so that we can track which slide you are speaking to. Zaman, take it away.
Thank you. And for nearly 15 years, I have seen the same scene play out in front of my eyes in my clinic, where a patient comes in after a hospital visit, or they come in after a cardiologist visit, or they saw their cancer doctor, and they come in. And all that visit produced is a folder that they have with a bunch of papers. And that's really the best case scenario. I mean, a lot of the times they don't have anything, but they sometimes would bring that folder full of papers. Now, what changed on the government side is now we have a federal rule that every patient has the right to a complete electronic export of their records from all the certified EHRs. The issue is the right exists, but export is a file. It's not a tool. It has nowhere to live. And if you can please go to the first slide there. There's about 43.7% of US adults. They are now juggling various, multiple patient portals, but only 5.4% actually have access to some tool that can combine those in some form. And that's really the gap that CareLead is out to close. The export can come from any potential EHR, any certified EHR, and the patient gets only one coherent, governed, action-ready record that they actually are the ones they control. So CareLead basically keeps the patient in the middle as the integration node. As you can see, we're a physician-led team with expertise across all necessary domains, and we're soon to start a community pilot with Alabama Cares. Next slide, please. All right, so here what you see is the first thing is what makes CareLead different, and I would say just one word, and that is governance. Basically, everything our AI does is visible to and controlled by the patient themselves. So there's four things you see here on this slide. The first thing I would say is if you look at the first screen here from the app itself, it's basically anything that the AI reads, whether it's a document, for example, a discharge summary in this case, it produces a list of suggestions. Those things are not automatically recorded into your record. It's basically happening only when the patient confirms that it's true and correct. The second thing is that every fact actually shows its source. So it tells you where that record is coming from. And that is, absolutely important to make sure everything is auditable, traceable, and the source is determined. The third thing, and frankly speaking, as a physician, that's my favorite, is when we have conflicting records, records that come in from different sources and that disagree. Like for example, over here, there may be a medication which one source says the patient is taking 100 milligrams, the other source says they should be taking 50 milligrams. CareLead doesn't just silently merge them; it actually surfaces that disagreement and let the patient settle and take care of it. So that way, whatever is actually logged is true and correct and actually happening. And the last thing here is like when you ask a question from the CareLead, the information actually comes in from your own confirmed record with a traceable source. So, for example, if a medication, you can have a source of whether it came from a discharge summary or whether the patient added it or whatever the case may be. Now, the pipeline behind all of this is patent pending and the platform is HIPAA aligned. But I think the important thing is the principle fits in one single line, and that is AI drafts, the patient confirms. Next slide, please. Now, this is actually a live, real prototype app that is there, a working app that is there. And presently we're working on the UI and the compliance side of it. Now, here in this example, you see like there's multiple different exports coming from three different sources. Like one is an EHR that comes from the hospital, another one from a specialist clinic, and one from primary care. And what CareLead is doing is it's ingesting all of those and creating one single record based on the principles we already discussed. So there's three exports in and one record out. And we are, standards aligned, all mentioned there on the slide. But the most important thing is that what does it all mean? Why does it matter? And the reason why it matters so much is that the potential impact is incredible, and I as a physician see it every single day. Like for example, in this case over here, we see the 68% of admission, how many mistakes there are happening, medications that are supposed to be taken by the patients, they're not, and so forth. And so we allow that reconciliation to happen, with the application there itself. The second piece there is caregivers actually are accessing, more and more patient portals. So caregiver access has doubled since 2020, but there is really no permission model behind that. And CareLead answers both. It fixes the initial problem, but also it introduces a really fine-grained permission model. And lastly, we actually ingest from all EHRs. So basically, the integration is not necessarily institutional based. It's just from one household to another, and that's how we grow and expand. So I'm really honored to be one of the, CareLead is to be one of the winners, and thank you so much for your time.
Wonderful. Next up, we have Kenneth Watson Jr., CEO and founder of HealthLink 360.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. Good afternoon. I want to begin with one patient, not with my name. Imagine a man in a rural community recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes where the nearest specialist may be hours away. He downloads hundreds of pages of health records from three systems that do not communicate with one another. Buried inside are two conflicting instructions for the same medication. One tells him to take 500 milligrams twice a day, and the other tells him to take 1,000 milligrams once a day. He has access to his information, but no safe way to know which instruction is current. If he guesses wrong, this is no longer a paperwork problem. It becomes a patient safety problem. The health system gave him the record, but left him holding the risk. That is not empowerment. That is abandonment with a download button. My name is Kenneth Watson, and as a former medical malpractice attorney, I have seen what can happen when fragmented information becomes fragmented care. That is what HealthLink 360 is all about. And as a personal wellness assistant that makes sense of fragmented health data, we apply that intelligence to one urgent question. How do we help patients safely use their health records they already have? Next slide, please. Most solutions begin by summarizing the record. HealthLink 360 begins with one step earlier. We bring that export together, preserve where every fact came from, and we reconcile information across these sources. We then evaluate it for recency and consistency. And we have one rule for our AI, which is simple: no source, no statement. When records disagree, the system does not bury the conflict or allow AI to silently choose a winner. It surfaces the disagreement, cites both sources, and routes it to the appropriate clinician or care team member for resolution. The patient is not left to make a clinical decision alone. The care team steps in when the patient needs them the most. Once this is resolved, the decision becomes part of the reconciled record, so the same confusion does not follow him into the next visit. From one reconciled record, the patient understands what needs attention, the community health worker knows where support is needed, and the clinician sees the cited evidence required to resolve the conflict. We are not simply making the record easier to read. We are using technology to reconnect the patient with the people responsible for his care. Next slide, please. That is how HealthLink 360 helps rebuild trust, not by asking patients to become clinicians, but by helping the care team see the problem and act before confusion becomes harm. HealthLink 360 is built on open standards already, so it can work across EHR environments rather than becoming another isolated destination. And we use agentic AI and digital twin technology not just to close the gaps in care, but simulate the best actions of next steps. We measure success by what happens next. Was the medication conflict reviewed before it became an error? Was the overdue screening scheduled? Was the follow-up completed and returned to care? We are beginning with rural and underserved communities because when access is limited, people cannot afford the information they already have to remain confusing, contradictory, or disconnected from action. And HealthLink 360 does not stop at the clinical record. We already harmonize lifestyle behavior, wearable biometrics, and social determinants of health to create a more complete picture of the person, because health does not happen only inside the clinic. Our early pilots have resulted in medication adherence rates of 93% and a reduction of ER visits of around 70%. So the future of patient access is not more information. It is knowing what matters, who needs to step in, and what should happen next. HealthLink 360 is built to help the right person receive the right care at the right time before confusion becomes harm and before risk becomes disease. Because better care should not begin at the point of crisis, it should begin while there is still time to change what happens next. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marcel Falar, who is a founder of HubChart. Take it away.
All right.
Hey, Marcel, we can hear you just fine.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, my name is Marcel Fillard. I am an internist and geriatrician at practice. I developed HubChart app, and it's currently in clinical use right now, and it's being used by different groups. It's a startup. I built and run it. It's a care team platform in live clinical use today. So today I'll start with a patient, Mr. Jones, who's not his real name, leaving the hospital for a nursing home facility. This is our anchor case. Somewhere in that stack of paper, 85 files or 85 pages, and his complete medical records, every result, every note, every medication. He does not read it. Okay. The receiving team at the nursing home reads a few pages in a hurry. One more admission's coming soon, so they have to hurry up. They find medication list, which is what matters, enters in their system, each EHR system, one by one medication, each medication, and then sends it to the pharmacy. A study this year graded 265 EHR systems on export everything requirement, and the grade was a D. Okay, so tells you how bad the exports are. So the first thing we believe, the most essential, actionable items, even before or right on arrival. Serve it while the issue is hot, right? Not weeks later in a portal. At the moment, it matters the most because healthcare is busy. Now let's shift the scene for a minute and picture yourself. Imagine you're in a clinic. You're the patient. You're with the doctor. Your phone buzzes. You receive essential results on your phone of your recent medical test. They arrive on your phone. You review results while the doctor is still in the room. You ask questions about the results in real time, face to face. And your actionable plans are there. And you ask the doctor too. It does not come in bulk of pages. Now you are an active participant in control of your care. The patient, that's Mr. Jones. Now back to the nursing home where Mr. Jones is discharged from the hospital. Mr. Jones gets a familiar text again, a familiar notification, no medical information in the message. The, the link expires in a day. He knows the security rules. He's been doing this for years. He verifies with only two things. He already knows his date of birth, the last 4 digits of his phone. Views his short history summary. No app download, no account, no password. Right. The login screen is the single biggest barrier of usability for patients. So on transfers, we took this off the front door. He only needs an account to save all his records and retrieve it later. So slide number 2, please. Okay, so you see on the left side, we got a patient access. This is the patient access portal, and we have a patient can get the summary right away, and then some information about vital signs and essentials, and the red marked fonts are the essential diagnosis and information, and what he needs to find out. And then on the right side is where he can choose like what options he wants by a click. And he can also enter a free question, right? And so this is physician approved information before it goes to the patient. And that's very powerful because he is acting right on the spot and he gets the information. So the login screen is the single biggest barrier of this usability. So transfers we took on and we're now doing that currently with our patients. It just moves the problem into their phone. For first thing, Mr. Jones meets it's not a document. It doesn't need a document. It needs a conversation. He needs a conversation, a welcome message, a few suggested questions. He pulls what he needs. He needs it, texting it, what he already does all day anyway. He's used to it. Everybody's used to texting. So what happens, what it means, and what his team recommended, it's all in red. Went to get help on the right. He asks on the right side, two things to make that safe is that a clinician is always on the loop. Personal information is stripped out before any AI touches it. And a real doctor reviews and approves the summary. Nothing reaches the patient until then. Every fact traces back to his own record. Where we push to go outside of it, we name the source. Open-ended questions or urgent questions goes to the care team directly, not an AI answered response. Slide 3, please. So the slides we haven't shown you, a patient should own the record, a hub they control ultimately, and bring to any visit, any doctor. Ownership is the only durable guarantee, which is the real work ahead for everybody. Get your own information. And the last one, why can't doctors write a dual purpose plan, dual purpose MDM for both compliance and for the patient instead of one? Medical notes already serve billing, heavy regulation, defensive medicine, the same assessment plan, the most useful thing the patient ever reads without giving up any of the first purpose. If healthcare cannot coordinate across its own walls, maybe the answer is to let the patients carry the record for them. That is how a computable record becomes a usable one. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Glenn Palmiere, Chief Business Development Officer at MediVu. Take it away, Glenn.
Thank you. Next slide. Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Palmiere. Thank you to ONC and CMS, and congratulations to all of today's finalists. Every team here agrees that patients deserve health information that is clear and actionable. But when a patient requests their electronic health information today, what they receive is a fragmented snapshot from a single encounter, not a complete picture of their care. It satisfies the legal requirement, but is completely unusable for real-world decisions. The mandate solved access, but it didn't solve accuracy or usability. Patients, clinicians, practices, and payers are all looking at conflicting pictures of the same record and making critical decisions based on data that may simply be wrong. MediVu doesn't just make your health data readable, we make it complete. Next slide, please. The engine behind that trusted view is MediVu Intelligence Suite, which checks every event in real time against the 4-layer validation model: coded compliance, narrative accuracy, inferred logic, and clinical context, all for every event. Before anything moves forward, we surface clinical evidence that structured data alone would never find. Most platforms use a single data feed and clean up the mess later. MediVu validates at the source, and that's what makes what you're about to see from Maria possible. Meet Maria. Her primary care doctor is using Epic. Her cardiologist is a different EHR, and her labs are at Quest Diagnostics. Instead of navigating 3 separate portals and piecing the information together herself, MediVu searches, surfaces, and unifies clinical evidence across all 3, including findings that were buried in physician notes, into a single trusted view. Even better, Maria can use our Ask MediVu AI tool to proactively manage her care. She can ask, what health test or appointment should I have had this year that I haven't done yet? MediVu compares her data against official quality guidelines and shows her in plain language that her A1C gap is closed, but her diabetic retinal exam is still due this year. Every inference is explainable, every step HIPAA compliant, every action audible. No black boxes, no exceptions. Because dumb, dirty data remains dumb and dirty, even with a pretty interface, we fix the data first, then we deliver it. Next slide, please. And this isn't theoretical. The first phase of our 3-part platform is live and expanding. MediVu's Connect layer is operational today across hundreds of practices in multiple states, exchanging data bidirectionally with more than 25 different EHR products, including Epic, Cerner, ECW, and Athena Health. We are built natively on the interoperability standards that ONC has adopted. We are now deploying the process layer, where we validate every clinical event against confirmed actions, coding opportunities, and claim accuracy in real time. And ACT, our patient-facing delivery layer, is what you just saw Maria use. What this means for our users? For providers, up to $42,000 per physician annually by eliminating chart chase, pre-authorization friction, and retrospective coding work. For payers, $11 to $24 per member per month in net new value. That equates to $13 to $29 million yearly across a 100,000 member network by closing care gaps, confirming coding, and resolving identity conflicts at the moment of the encounter. MediVu finally answers the question everyone in silos is struggling with. What does my complete health record say? And is it correct? Maria's A1C result was in her chart. Her care gap was in her payer system. Nobody had connected them, confirmed them, or delivered them to her until MediVu did. That's what we do. Every event, every patient, every time. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Arthur Henderson, President and CEO of Precision Health Ventures.
Next slide, please. When we set upon developing Surely Health, we really put ourselves in the position of someone newly diagnosed with a serious ailment, or the parent of a parent or caregiver. We also believe in the whole manila folder concept. You know, most folks, when they get that diagnosis, that's what they're armed with, a manila folder full of handouts, even web printouts, or they've even taken their content and giving it to a hyperscaler and looked for insights from there. It's all old, disorganized, half illegible, and it's still not anything that you can make any coherent insights out of. Providers and insurers have multi-million-dollar systems to manage the health situations of their patients, but the patient has nothing. We have portals, you know, multiple logins, fragmented data, that type of thing, a concept we call death by portal. And when the record finally comes out, it's not really usable by the individual. It's computable, but not usable. I'm Arthur Henderson, Managing Director of Precision Health Ventures, and we propose Surely Health for this. Our approach is to really ingest a number of different, not only EHI exports, but other things, including lifestyle and health data from the patient, and transform that into a clear, plain language, longitudinal summary in which every statement is traceable back to its source. It's all built around a core unified health timeline, leveraging plain language Q&A over the patient's own record, and the patient-controlled external sharing that could be invoked at any time. You know, our team is pretty experienced at this. We've been doing solutions in the DoD, DoW space for a number of years on the healthcare side. We've had solutions deployed to the VA, solutions deployed to commercial payers. We're very experienced with FHIR, with My Healthy Vet, Blue Button, all those other concepts. One of our partner companies is really is an NVIDIA Insight partner, because we're one of the companies doing innovative things with AI to benefit the patient. So during our phase 2, we'll just be taking this to another level. Many pieces of it are already built, and we'll just be enhancing it as part of this phase 2 effort. Next slide, please. So what we're really doing is not just an AI feature, it's really a AI governed health intelligence platform. You know, we've got earned autonomy built into the governance system and keep human in the loop, or the patient in the loop, for the things that we're moving towards. We've seen numbers as high as 80% of all healthcare data exists outside the clinical the clinical setting, and getting access to that exogenous data is what we're really all about. We've got a proprietary AI image analytics tool, which allows us to scan everything from after visit summaries, lab reports, other things in addition to the EHI summaries, and capture that information on behalf of the patient, whether it's wearable data or stuff from CGMs. One of the most valuable components to that oftentimes is the time series information, which is encoded with it. with when you're just getting discrete data points, you lose that context, you lose that ability. So by simply pulling out a phone and taking a picture of a lab result, an after visit summary, any medication notes or anything else, all of that gets ingested into the system for the patient to be able to query as they see fit. Our correlation engine ties it all together in the appropriate time frame so we can connect and see how someone sleeps, moves, and eats throughout the day. One of our other strengths is really our patient-centric AI infrastructure. We built a tool which allows us to deliver LLMs at the desktop of the patient. One of the things we'll be seeing over the next few months is more compute capability being in the hand of the patient, whether that's on a more powerful phone or a laptop or a desktop. We'll see resident LLMs on those home devices, which we have an infrastructure that lets us manage that as well. So the bottom line for the patient is we resolve it into 4 simple views. We have our summary view, our timeline view, our conversational interface, and our consent dashboard, because all that data sharing is governed by the patient. This will also help patients prepare more when they do have time with their clinical team to ask the right questions and get the right answers. Next slide, please. Surely Health is really based on 3 foundational premises. Every solution must be patient-centric, it must be secure, and it must interoperate with the existing healthcare ecosystem. As we ingest all these different data types and normalize them and unearth all sorts of new contextual relationships that weren't discernible when we only had discrete data points, we will continue to make interesting insights and support better patient care. In our demo, we'll actually be demonstrating this ingestion on a single device, no internet connectivity. So anybody with a phone can ingest any of that data and query it from an LLM. We also have a model where we can allow connections into healthcare partners where you leverage that compute for population health analytics and things like that. Our impact is immediate. It gives the patients the records they need to manage their health circumstance more effectively. We know from previous experience, patients can experience data overload. They want a very simple interface, 1 or 2 things they need to do to improve their health, and they don't want to be a physician themselves. So what we'll provide is a lifetime of scattered records, 1 clear, concise view, patient-controlled view of that health. And we look forward to continuing to progress and brief you on our progress as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will be hearing from Emerson Villalta, founder and CEO of Quinoa, Inc.
Thank you, Oliver. Hey, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to the ONC, to the EHIgnite team, and the judges that put out the competition. And also wants to congrats to everyone else being recognized today. It is a real privilege to be counted in this group. Next, please, sorry. I want to start by briefly talk about why we're building Quinoa. I was a family caregiver for 10 years, starting at a really early age. And I personally experienced those challenges of a fragmented healthcare system that everybody before me has talked about. And all of this brings up a lot of friction to a family. And this is an experience that around 63 million people believe right now in the US alone. So today, even though we've had been seeing advancements in interoperability and a vaster access to data, data alone doesn't change people's lives. Data alone doesn't change outcomes. Next, please. So at Quinoa, we make data actionable. We started as a family hub where our agentic AI ingests the full view of the patient's health, electronic health records, wearables, insurance, have that complete view, and then we use that data to automatically populate our features, appointments, medication changes, tasks needed to be done, visit preparation. Basically, we are an agentic coordinator for the patients and the caregivers at home. Next. We are now taking a step further. We realize that our platform can also capture data that happens at home from the patients and caregivers. So we can see how good they've been sticking to their medication. Are they completing the tasks that have been assigned to them? Are they going to their appointments as planned? And more importantly, we can capture any symptoms that they might be experiencing. And in clinical trials, visibility to what happens at home is crucial. And it could be the reason why a clinical trial succeeds or not. So by combining what happens at home with the clinicians that are running clinical trials, Quinoa aims to provide attrition and safety intelligence. So patients remain engaged during a clinical trial, and any early signals of attrition and toxicity is captured. So clinicians can act proactively instead of reactively and lose a lot of money because of this. So I want to end that saying that we at Quinoa, we welcome collaboration from any source. And if you want to connect with us, please go to tryquinoa.health, or you can also find me in LinkedIn. Finally, I want to extend a thank you to Dr. Uber Center and Taylor Galloway from Mayo Clinic and Sarah Porter from Boardwalk Health for the continued support. We're starting our first pilot with a major healthcare institution soon, and we invite you to follow our journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, we have Professor William Lober of the University of Washington with Washington Health Summary. Take it away.
Thanks. First slide, please. I want to tell you about 3 personas that guide us. Rosa's pulsed form is sealed in an envelope on her refrigerator. She arrives at an emergency department unconscious, and no one knows that she and her physician have documented her treatment preferences. Tom worked 18 years in agriculture in Eastern Washington. His new provider has his past labs, but nothing about his chemical exposures. Diane has tracked her lupus for 11 years in a notebook. Her lived experience is fragmented across the records of the many specialists she's seen and in her own notes. An EHI export contains only what a health system writes down. A complete picture requires 2 more things: integrating records from every place a patient has been and allowing patients to add what only they can tell you. And when patients see their clinical data, they can't always make sense of it. Our 2026 usability study found clinical terminology was the highest severity barrier. It affected every one of our participants. I'm Bill Lober. Jan Flowers and I co-lead this work at the University of Washington with Bryant Karras and his team at the Washington State Department of Health. Our predecessor platform, WaVerify, was used about 2 million times by Washington State residents. And those users told a UW evaluation study that they wanted more data for more use cases and more ways to share their information. That's Washington Health Summary. It works today, aggregating records into an HL7 International Patient Summary that can be shared as a link or a QR code. WAS Plus adds user-centered redesign, adopts the USPCS standard, and adds AI for 2 jobs: integrating records and understanding them. Next slide, please. So standards first, AI second. We use patient-initiated smart app launches against Epic, Oracle Cerner, Meditech, and eClinicalWorks, data from state registries, payer data through Karen, tested against TEFCA, all of it normalized using the International Patient Summary Standard. Then patients can add to their records. Advanced care documents like Pulse use HL7 PASIO guides. Occupational data follows NIOSH standards. Symptoms and questionnaires use FHIR. Computable data, not scanned PDFs. The AI does 2 things, both strictly grounded in the patient's own record. It translates clinical language into plain language and answers questions with links back to the source. And it flags conflicts for the patient to verify before sharing, such as the same medication reported by different systems or information that appears improbable. On the right is the redesign, guided setup, review your data, and share with 1 tab. Zoom in and open that QR code, and you'll see demo data from Epic and from an insurer, and pulsed and occupational history added by an imaginary patient. Next slide. Every piece runs on ONC adopted standards with no proprietary dependencies. The AI runs locally, scoped to the current authenticated patient. No model training on patient data. Nothing new is required of anyone. Patients sign in with portal credentials they already have. When they share, the recipient scans a QR code and an IPS document renders in any browser with underlying discrete FHIR ready for ingestion by an EHR or public health system. No receiving app needed, and sharing stays under the patient's control. So Rosa's pulse travels with her. Tom's exposure history reaches his provider. Diane's 11 years become part of her record. WAS Plus is a public good using consensus standards. Any state can adapt it rather than rebuild it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much to all of our presenters this afternoon. Again, congratulations to the Phase 1 winners. We are really looking forward to seeing these final products in action next year. Phase 2 launched just last week, and will close at the end of next March. With winners to be announced in the May-June timeframe of early next summer. Again, they're competing for a grand prize of $250,000. Second place will get 100,000, third 30,000. And there is a separate award for which all teams are available however they place during the final judgments. It is the most innovative use of AI award, which is $20,000. Um, this has been such an interesting session. We see how many fresh ideas and approaches are out there to tackle this problem. And I think that there are a number of things that will be available for all types of users to help solve this, tackle this challenge, to really optimize and maximize the utility of EHI exports. Again, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available on ONC channels and on the challenge website. That is EHIgnitechallenge.org. I want to thank everybody for attending today. And for those of you who applied but did not make it into the winner pool, appreciate your participation and want to encourage you to keep at it. So thanks everybody and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.